Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone. And welcome to today's Modern Sales Pros session on making the most of your 2021 sales kickoff, sponsored by the team at Uber for Business. I'm going to give everybody just a few minutes to get in and get settled before we jump into our program today. And really excited to be joined by Tom from the Uber team. And Tom, as you know, it's MSP tradition for all first-time speakers and first-time guests. We want to find out a little bit more about you. So Tom,
Awesome.
Since the start of the pandemic, anything new, any new skills you've picked up or hobbies that you've refined?
Yeah, Rich, thanks. So we were just chatting about it. Can't wait to hear yours as well down in Miami. But for me here, I'm in the East Bay, and so I'm a father of 3 sons. And so as part of the pandemic fun, my kids are super into Fortnite. So I've learned so much about Fortnite, the seasons, the skins, and it's been fun. Still doing learning and other things with my kids. I ensure everyone, but Fortnite is all the rage, and I love it.
You heard it here first. Come to Tom for the sales kickoff information, but stay for the Fortnite hacks. I love it. And Tom, one of the parts that's really exciting about this is a topic that is super applicable to everybody right now. It's very relevant. You mentioned the seasons in Fortnite. Like, this is the season that sales leaders are coming to right now. I'm just going to say a few words about Modern Sales Pros before we jump in. For folks who aren't aware, today's event is hosted by the team at Modern Sales Pros. Modern Sales Pros is the world's largest community for revenue leaders in sales and revenue operations, sales enablement, sales development, and the related supporting disciplines. For those of you who aren't members, you'll be invited to join shortly after our session here today. And the mission of our community is to create an environment for our 20,000 members where they can answer the biggest questions they struggle to solve on their own. As Tom can attest, sometimes being a revenue leader gets really lonely, and you need to have perspective from those outside of your immediate network. Modern Sales Pros offers that through both online discussions like what we'll have here today, where we bring on an expert to share their perspective, and through robust online forum, and hopefully, once we can get back to it, in-person events. Membership is free, and certainly encourage you to give us a look and join. And today's programming really wouldn't be possible without the sponsorship from the team at Uber for Business. I hand it off to Tom to say just a few words about Uber for Business.
Thanks, Rich. Yeah, so I would imagine nearly everyone on this webinar knows Uber, right? We all know Uber. My grandmother knows Uber. But what is Uber for Business? Very quickly, Uber for Business is simply a set of kind of software solutions, a software platform in which you and your business can standardize all of your ground transportation on our platform, along with any meals that your team may be purchasing or using. We have an Eats for Business solution as well, along with an emerging delivery platform. And hopefully some of you may have seen, but the recent acquisition of Postmates, and some really exciting things happening in 2021.
And one of the great parts about working with Uber for Business, for all of our participants here today, where the Uber for Business is going to be offering a $10 voucher as a thank you for sharing your time. And Uber for Business is actually something we use at MSP. Even prior to meeting Tom and the team, we use Uber for Business to make our lunches something really special. So for those of you who are interested, Uber is certainly going to reach out afterwards. But as a special incentive, if you take some time to meet the team and want to learn a little bit more, Uber will be also offering a $40 voucher on top of the 10 here, which is, Tom, thanks for that. It's pretty awesome. And as a sort of a customer of Uber for Business, it is a very powerful tool to create memorable experiences, even when you can't reach out and like grab a beer, like what we were talking about before.
Yeah, we were just So I mean, hopefully, in this season, Rich, you get that nice pumpkin soy latte or something. I don't know if it's maybe iced in Miami, Rich. You tell me, but yeah, definitely want to get that in your hands.
This is phenomenal. Not yet iced. I'm more of a cold brew guy, as weird as that sounds,
Okay.
which is really hard to find down here.
That's
So
tough.
anybody in the comment section, if you have good recommendations for cold brew or Fortnite strategies, we're taking those as well as talking about SKOs. But let's jump into it a little bit. I'm really excited to be joined by Tom Cox. He's the head of operations at Uber for Business. Before I give him a chance to introduce himself, this is a really complex topic. There's a lot of different angles here. Please do take advantage of this time to think about your own sales kickoff that you might be planning, or revenue kickoff or team kickoff, and start to formulate those questions. We have Tom for the whole hour here. But as I said, I'm really excited to be joined by Tom Cox, and I'll hand it off to him for a quick introduction.
Cool. Yeah. I'll try to make this brief. So been in sales and in the SaaS space for about a decade. So my background, actually, I got into this community a little differently, Rich. So my background, kind of grew up, went to elementary school, junior high, actually in the Middle East. And that's where kind of I established this really deep passion for currencies, for economics. And that led me to pursuing that passion, studying economics at Harvard, and really followed in the normal path of pursuing kind of the finance side, worked at a hedge fund. And then ultimately, if you're in the Bay Area, which I was in San Francisco, being right at the epicenter of this software as a service movement, I got a huge opportunity to join Salesforce and a few years after their IPO. And that's where I spent a number of years of my career, worked on kind of product strategy, corporate strategy. But ultimately, where I found this community was joining Salesforce's sales strategy team, which led me to pursuing my first startup. Went down to LA. We ended up selling that startup after a few years, came back up to the Bay Area, joined Blend, which is a kind of later stage startup, and spent a few years there. And then since joined Uber for Business, and have been just past my 1 year mark. So completely normal year, 1 year, super smooth. But no, in all seriousness, we've learned a ton and excited to be on this topic.
And Tom, I know, just ballpark, how many sales kickoffs have you been involved with throughout your trajectory? I know it's a tough question, but
Yeah.
How many think you've done?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that over the weekend, Rich. I'm probably closing in on the double digit mark, so probably just around 10, in all shapes and sizes. So I've done the for all the Salesforce alumni, just fantastic, huge events as you'd expect, to very, very intimate, smaller startup, to Blend, which a bit more mature startup. And then of course, Uber for Business, we had a fantastic SKO last year. And I actually, Rich and I were talking about, I've got it on, for all those SKO organizers, please invest in nice swag, because, I wear this to the park. I, roll around town in this thing, invest in good quality stuff.
I love it. And before we jump into this, and I know I had mentioned it before, but Tom's going up there on double digits from the sales kickoff standpoint. This is your opportunity to learn how to execute a world-class sales kickoff in the face of all of the uncertainty that we've experienced in 2020 and 2021. We've got Tom for about an hour here. So for all of you that are here live, please do use the question and answer panel. Any questions you want to talk about, Tom's done this a bunch. He's got great perspective. And then also for those of you who are asking questions, we will provide the recording afterwards. Usually takes about 24 hours of post-processing. So just stay tuned to take a look for that. But with that, you're ready to jump into it, Tom?
Oh, I would love to, Rich. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So, let's talk about first principles, right? Like, sales kickoffs seem like a really great idea, but where the hell do you get started with this? And how should folks kind of think about doing it right?
Yeah, Rich, and I got a chance to think about this over the last few weeks, and there's really three things that come to mind. So number one, reflection. Number two, inclusivity, and then thirdly, appreciation. And so I'd love to dive into each of those, but But I think those three concepts, if you can nail each of those three, I think you're going to be off to a fantastic SKO for 2021. And so the first one is really around, to use the word, kind of breakdown reflection. I think of it in kind of two parts. There's both reflecting on the year that you had, whether it's by the numbers, whether it's certain product releases or maybe new market segments, and then secondly, on where you're going, right? Because this is a nice time to kind of get the team together, energized, and focused on what's next.
And with that, when you think about that idea of reflecting on where you're going, what's the split of kind of rearward looking, yay, rah, rah, we did it, versus, hey, we're going to burn the ships. This is where we're going. Let's get ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Rich. I think, each company is going to be a little different. I'm thinking back to my own experience of, there's going to be in kind of any life cycle of a SaaS company, or any company for that matter, of perhaps large milestones. So like one SKO, we had just raised an incredible amount of money. And so it was like, we got to go grow, 3, 4, 5x next year. This is going to be insane. So there's kind of that. And then there might be, perhaps this year, just an incredible year of challenges, of learnings, of pivots. And so you may want to think about that. So for example, last year, we were, hiring like crazy. And so, and this is maybe another thing to think about, is like a theme. I know it's kind of tactical. I know we'll get into tactics a little bit later, Rich, but for example, last year I used Reid Hoffman. He had just released one of his newer books called Blitzscaling. And so kind of use that theme and interwove it. So I'm sure many of you have read the book, but if not, we'll put it in the notes. But that's one of my favorites. So anyways, definitely want to reflect. And then I think that transitions nicely into the second major first principle, which is inclusivity. And so, it's a time to bring people together. And there's, I think, a few different dimensions there, Rich. There's the, of course, different layers of the company. At a large company, you may have many, many layers. You may have, SDR, senior SDR, BDR, all the way up to RVP, SVP, EVP. And so getting all of those people together is just a truly unique and exciting opportunity. But then I think the other dimension is around the functions. And so, especially in my role and other sales ops professionals out there, that it's very, very important. It's really essential to be able to work cross-functionally with not just, your sales team and your sales development teams. It's also about, how do you make sure you bring in the marketing team? How do you make sure you bring in the finance team, strategy and planning, you name it, kind of getting even our legal team, hugely important to have them involved. So getting everyone together is kind of that being inclusive. And that's super, super important.
And I think, to just put a fine point on this, sales kickoffs, I think maybe that term's a little bit dated now. I think you're seeing kind of it being a company kickoff or a go-to-market org kickoff. But if you have the opportunity to put together folks who, especially at a decent sized company, you don't know everybody. Tom, you don't know everybody at Uber. There was organizations I've worked at where maybe I know your face. This is a unique opportunity, even in a virtual world, which we'll talk about next, to really bring different folks together who maybe have shared interest, shared passion. With the last company kickoff that I was a part of, when we were able to do these things in person, we did inter-organizational scavenger hunt all across the city where we were. So we'd all traveled to it. And there was I was in sales engineering, and we had some engineers and some product designers. And it was just a great, memorable experience to really meet and be inclusive and meet other folks who I otherwise would not have had the chance to meet.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's exactly it, Rich. And I think, the third key pillar there is around appreciation. And, you could take that a few different ways. Of course, we all like to have fun, Rich, celebration, and it's a time to, kind of congratulate the people who really So of course there's appreciating the people who hold the quotas and the numbers and celebrating that. But I think it's also an opportunity to celebrate. There's just so many people, as you know, Rich, who are doing things kind of in the background, who are running the queries, who are doing all of the planning, who are organizing the swag boxes. And so giving those people a shout out as well, I think is super, super important. And I think too, having kind of going back to the first piece is being able to have that executive celebrate maybe someone earlier in their career. So like for my first SKO, I'll still to this day never forget. I was the guy doing all the slides. I love doing slides. That's why, Rich, when you told me I wasn't doing a slide for this, I was shocked. So I'm like typically the slide guy doing all the prezos. And had no idea I was going to get an award. And so, I had this dumb look on my face. People were congratulating me, but it was just such a cool moment. And by the way, I think we got like a nice little Ritz-Carlton package or something. This was a long time ago, but anyways, being able to celebrate people is really key.
And I think that's an important part for all organizations to think about. And this goes beyond sales kickoffs, but it's an important part of rewards and recognition. Oftentimes, a pat on the back or a good job from a senior executive to somebody junior in their career may make their week, it may make their month, it may, in Tom's case, be something he's talking about or she's talking about 5 or 10 years later. It's hugely, hugely important. And it's something we see a lot in MSP threads. It's an often forgotten component of the sales kickoff, which is why I'm glad that Tom had a chance to double click into that.
Yeah, and I would just say, it's definitely been, Rich, I'll admit, probably a handful of years since I've received an award. And so I think that's also something where, especially for the senior leaders on this, really enjoying being the one really awarding that and giving the award and being able to celebrate those people who are rising stars in the organization.
No, I think this is great. And then, one of the parts too is really important is kind of keeping morale high, right? Whether it's been a good year or a bad year, getting them energized for the team, getting the team energized for the year ahead, especially after a year like what we just went through. Any thoughts on how to kind of keep the energy level high before we transition into really the virtual specifics?
Yeah, I mean, and this is where I've seen, again, I'm thinking just about where that company is in their life cycle. So, we're lucky that we're a bit larger, and so we've been able to kind of partner with some professionals in the space on training. And so what we'll do is do kind of touch-ins or kind of touch bases on a certain cadence of, hey, here's what we did at SKO. We want to then follow up next month on, what were those themes? What are we going after? Okay, a quarter later, here's what we do. So not that you need fancy consultants, but that just helps. But having that cadence post SKO to keep the momentum going.
No, it's an important part of reinforcing that. Well, let's talk about this. And folks with questions, just to let you know, we're going to go through the entire program and then kind of take questions at the end. So do queue those up as they come live, and we'll be getting to those shortly. But okay, cool, Tom. Like, we can't get everybody together in one place
Right.
unless you're in Florida. But what should we be thinking about from a virtual sales kickoff standpoint? How does this change, or does it?
Yeah. So I guess the first thing is if your company's thinking about just taking last year's, slides, changing it to 2021, please don't do that. Like, we need to really rethink what we're going to be doing in a virtual space. I think the good thing is, and I'll get to it, there's been some fantastic research and thought leaders in this space, and I'll touch on some of that. But I think to start with, the thing that I think about a lot is, how do you think about really delighting your employees? And so, especially coming, if we have any product people on this webinar, delighting your users is, been a huge part of Silicon Valley, and it continues to be, of whether it's in the features, whether it's in even just like the design of your product. Delighting your users is key. And so I was thinking about this over the last month or so, is, how do you really delight your employees? And so, and just use a quick example, I was telling Rich, we did our own kind of team kind of virtual offsite. We have people across the globe. And we ended up using kind of Eats vouchers to give everyone kind of a family pizza night. And so, it was a cool idea, but I think what came out of that was ended up sharing pictures. And, my 1-year-old actually ate my 3 and 6-year-old. He had nearly 2 slices of pizza, which Rich is crazy. The kid eats a ton, but just having those kind of delightful moments. We didn't know it was coming. Okay, we're okay, cool. I got this meal, but then that sharing and so anyways, we could take that a few different ways, but I do think if you can kind of weave in some of that delightfulness, whether it's with a care package, whether it's a certain swag, like this, having something that you can give your team.
And I think on that point as well, and this is maybe the most first principle of all of it is really be clear about why you're there and what you're doing, right? It's easy to delight your users when you know what you're trying to accomplish, and that's an important part for everyone planning an SKO, whether virtual or otherwise. I think the other part, and I do think this is important, it's perspective that MSP has seen in the community as well with the events that we've done. You want to really create a few memorable moments that aren't just content. It's not just learning the new messaging, but it is something kind of fun, like it is the pizza party picture. But you want to create an environment, whether it's a Slack channel or an email thread or whatever the Microsoft equivalent of Slack is, a place for people to share, like, hey, this is what I did with my voucher, right? We're making pizza together. Or we've seen this with other virtual events just in general, where there's either like a fitness component where everybody does a particular Peloton, or there's a 5K route, there's coloring activities for children. There's a lot of this in the virtual events world, especially for the summits, that I think is super applicable here, Tom. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you touched on it, Rich, and that's where I was going with this next is, and again, I'm assuming many listeners have read, it was on the cover of the last HPR magazine, which is kind of our work from anywhere future. And kind of one of the top minds in this space, his name's Raj Chudhuri, and we'll put that link in there. But I think the way he frames it is, what do you really need? So meaning, in his term is kind of synchronous versus asynchronous. So synchronous meaning like real time. So like, what do you need to do real time? And I think, and Rich and I, we were talking about this, kind of reflecting on some of our prior SKOs. And so like, let's just use the Uber for Business SKO last year. We have a global team. We have people in India, we have people in Australia. And so Latin America, I could go on, Europe. And so we all met up in New York City. And when you put all those people together, there's this pressure to do things. I think we had 3 or 4 days and jam pack, it's just such a rare opportunity to get everyone globally in the same physical space, right? I mean, it's crazy to think about. And so now that we're kind of going into this virtual world for SKO, think about, I would recommend trying to reflect on what needs to be synchronous. So like, what do you guys all want to be on for? And so, my opinion would be, and what we're trying to do is like getting some of those executive voices so that we're all kind of all in the room, or product kickoffs, and marketing's going to give a new sales pitch deck and making sure everyone is aligned there. And if people have live questions, but then, what could you do offline? And so we're still in the planning phases, but initially what we're thinking, Rich, is doing some, live. So people across the globe are all going to be on there together. And then some things we're going to record so that if someone is listening live late at night, they can, go to sleep, wake up, have something recorded that someone else was doing live, and then catch right back up. And so I would say, think of that. And then just real quick, Rich, the last thing would be, again, we're a global team. And so I think it's really important to consider, all of those global folks. So, and for us, we're HQ'd in San Francisco, probably many in software are. Think about, making sure that, you're not just doing it 9 to 5 Pacific time, that you're kind of catering so that everyone feels that they're kind of equal in the mix in terms of live content.
I think there's a lot in there. One of the things, and this is a question that even Tom, you and I were discussing before, but like how much content is the right amount in this virtual world, right? Should we death by PowerPoint all day, every day? Like what are you thinking about for Uber here?
Yeah, I mean, I think of course, PowerPoint, we use, Google Slides, but whatever that is, I mean, it's a nice medium and we're using it right now. So that's still, there's going to be power to that. But I do think that you need to either one, think about what you need, what's critical, and then what could you perhaps space out? So we've been doing a number of new hire trainings and the feedback is, Tom, why don't we space out some of those things? We maybe don't need to jam all that into a couple days. And so we're definitely trying to work on that feedback for our own SKO. I think another thing to think about would be like doing things outside of the slide, typical PowerPoint prezo. So, and again, if you look at the research, people, kind of the technical term is community collisions. And so there's kind of the famous case study of Pixar when they designed their new, I don't know if you guys have seen it, out in Emeryville, but apparently they purposefully designed their campus to have the restrooms in the center of the building to foster this, those community collisions. And so something, whether it's simple breakout sessions, whether it's pairing up, kind of like I said, some of those dimensions around senior folks, junior folks, people in different functions, but kind of having those breakouts. And then lastly, I would strongly recommend, and we're doing the same, is weave in or incorporate some other like non-work related things. So for example, and we've done this, we've got ideas coming, so I don't want to ruin the surprise, but, things around like, what is your brand personality? Things that are fun that you can learn from each other, but aren't like, here's the new feature that we're releasing, Rich, you should memorize it kind of thing.
I can't wait to memorize it after watching PowerPoint for 8 hours. I'm so excited about the new messaging, man. I can't lie. I think there's just another thing on this too, is that notion of that group may end up working together at a different point in time, right? Those like delightful collisions or serendipitous discovery, whatever the term is. That's also a cool way to excite and also retain employees. Oh, hey, Tom, you're in strategy. What the hell does a strategy person do at Uber? I've never encountered one of you before. Oh, wow, that's really interesting. Maybe that's something I want to do. And when you think about the virtualness of the sales kickoff and where we're all at this point, like physically in life, in our homes, that's a really cool, maybe afterthought to some of this. I do want to kind of call out that for Tom. You want to dive into beating Zoom fatigue on Zoom, Tom, or do you got anything else you want to talk about with the virtual sales kickoff?
No, I mean, like I said, I think, try to have fun and we'll go into some examples later, some of the tactical things that we're seeing some of our customers do. And, but yeah, I mean, I think shifting gears to Zoom fatigue. I mean, I think, you've seen it out there. I think it was, in the Wall Street Journal and so, we've all felt it. And I think kind of double clicking into that, Rich, there's an article that McKinsey released just recently. So we'll put it in the notes, but it's about kind of managing in extreme uncertainty. And where I think Zoom fatigue fits into this kind of broader overall challenge that we've had for 2020 is what kind of McKinsey frames as organizational exhaustion. So people are just tired, whether it's the Zoom fatigue, and Zoom's a fantastic tool. So I hate for Zoom to get totally to carry all that, because I do think there's kind of an elevated challenge, which is kind of that organizational fatigue. And so people are tired of the pivots, the changes, and I think McKinsey also breaks down a few other things around like information insecurity. Like we don't have the same information and the same paradigms that we had with a consistent business. All of our businesses are changing. And so, anyway, so I guess to kind of frame it that way, and I think and we're still, honestly, I think like many people on this webinar are still working through those challenges. But I think some of the way McKinsey frames it, which I really like, is around, I think it's discover, design and execute. And so, and a lot of it is just being able to pivot, to change. And I think, to boil it down, quite honestly, it's around listening to your employees. And I know that sounds like so elementary, Rick, and I apologize if that comes off as like so ridiculous, but it sometimes we forget, like, and that's what's been cool about doing our own kind of new hires who are all coming on virtually for the first time, is really listening to those new hires, listening to your employees. And that's really, in many of our U4B customers, that's what they're doing. They're listening to their employees and saying, hey, what do you want to do differently? What do you need? And I think for every company, the cultures are going to be a little different. So some, it might be simply like, hey, every Wednesday, no meeting Wednesday, or on Thursday, like no Zoom video. We're not going to put our videos on because people are going to exercise. I'm a big runner. I like to exercise and do some runs with the kind of baby. I get this really nice, rich baby jogger. It scares people. They're like, Tom, like, can you be running that fast? And so it's a beautiful jogger, it's a beautiful machine. But yeah, you may be working out and then you got to get on a meeting. So anyways, I think taking that into account is hugely important.
And I think this is something that we've learned and have an immense amount of experience with at Modern Sales, right? I mean, we do a lot of these. We've tried all different formats, all different sizes, shapes, and scopes of events, from 1 4-hour block to all different kinds. And what we found is that having deliberateness around what we're doing in every session, setting the intention, also recognizing that you can't, as much as we'd like to as leaders, take our team for 5, 6, 7 hours and say, all right, Tom, you're going to focus on this for the next 5 hours. You get 90 minutes and maybe 2 hours max. Personally, we do kickoffs with the team internally to MSP every quarter. And our first one, we tried to go for 4 hours and it was an absolute disaster. I mean, there was just, the attention span was through the floor. The focus was everywhere except for on what we needed to. And that comes back to some of the things Tom mentioned in first principles, being deliberate, having things that are novel, and appreciation. Obviously, we love the team at MSP and we love the community, but having more of that, and also being really, really smart about the time that you're spending, helps a ton. Tom, the interesting part I see here is this kind of enforcing off hours. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means? Because it's something we've heard about a few times, but I don't think we've got a clear definition on.
Yeah, again, I think some of this is kind of cultural, and I think, again, going back to kind of listening to your employees. So again, every company may be slightly different, but one just simple example would be having senior people on the team taking some time off during the holidays. I've seen that at Uber and other places where people very visibly are saying, hey, I'm going to be off these days. I encourage you to do the same. And so there's some of that cultural piece of kind of making it normal, which I think is really healthy and valuable. There's a ton of research out there. I saw some new stuff that just came through the other week around the importance of kind of recharging. And I think especially the year we've had for 2020, we talk about it all the time. And quite honestly, like, Uber has a very competitive culture. And so I think if we can do it, I think most companies can work that in.
I think that's great. And folks, I see the Q&A panel filling up. Please do keep those coming. We've got one more point to talk about here, and then we're going to, as best we can, answer the questions that have come in here. All right. So we've talked about this, Tom. We've hit on it a bunch. Who's doing it? Who's got it nailed? Who have you seen be like, oh, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I'll totally admit, like, I'm very, very fortunate because of the product suite that we offer. And just me being in the sales ops space, like, I have to know about these deals. Executives ask me. So like, this is part of my job. And so one deal that really excites me is, and I, unfortunately can't use a logo, but it's a logo everyone knows. It's a Fortune 100 huge global CPG brand, and they offer dozens, if not probably hundreds of different products, one of them being ice cream. And so they're doing this kind of cool, tell us your favorite ice cream, and then combining it. So it's kind of their own company. And then also with like an ugly sweater. So it's kind of a combo, take pictures, tell a story about, why this is your favorite ice cream flavor. And then it's kind of a competition to win. I don't know if we've settled on an exact number, but there's going to be a lot of winners. And so just kind of like, again, not 100% work related, but like having some fun, doing some things where you can, kind of bond with your colleagues in a less of a death by PowerPoint way. So that one's really fun. I don't know, Rich, have you seen any on your end? Because I feel like you're so well connected. You've got to know some cool stuff.
I think the most important part that I would impart to folks here is it's got to have that right balance between like memorable, and that can be from a content perspective and also from an experience. So one of the things that we've done at some MSP events, we did a joke writing workshop, and it was a phenomenal experience for our attendees because they got to kind of network and meet somebody new. They also got a little bit of an academic education in using comedy in sales and writing jokes. And it was very interesting because stand-up comedy, there are a lot of analogs between that and going through a sales process. There's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of failure. There's a lot of repetition. And that, I think, was one of the more memorable experiences that we've done. I think the other part too, on just getting the virtual event experience totally nailed. You've got to do some things to keep people energized and motivated throughout the day. Just think about an in-person sales kickoff. We had team breakfasts together. We're going to go into sessions. Then we're going to move into 3 hours of PowerPoint. Then we're going to do a lunch together, lunch networking. You can simulate some of that as we're dispersed. So think about ways to do that. And it doesn't have to be a one-for-one mapping there. But I think that that's a smart thing. And I think that that's in the current, uncertain times, it's probably one of the most promising things. And the last thing I would say, just in terms of that memorable point, like there is a very large list of organizations that you can work with to create memorable experiences, right? Whether it's through experiences like what Tom was talking about, we're being able to send, the ice cream and the ugly sweater and doing an experience like that. But there's a ton out there, and do explore those and take advantage of them. And if you need suggestions on cool stuff to do, just drop the team at MSP a note. We'll give you the whole laundry list of stuff that we tried that worked really well and the stuff that was an absolute disaster.
That's awesome.
All right. You want to take some questions, Tom?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Let's do it.
Oh, let's do it. All right. So our most popular question from Melissa Stewart here. When hosting a virtual sales kickoff, what are your thoughts on how to pull people together socially? It's one piece that they've really struggled with at different points in time. I know we touched on this a little bit, Tom, but what do you think? Like, what's Uber thinking about doing here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I think on everyone's mind. One thing perhaps to think about would be about the size. So how many people, and we've been on some of these global calls where there's literally almost 100 people on these calls. And as you can imagine, someone raising their hand or someone speaking up would be extremely challenging. And so I think the more that you can do those smaller events, I think the better. And again, thinking about the cross-functional team of who could you pull in. We were doing this kind of around the pandemic. We're still playing around with it, but this idea called coffee mates. And so that's where you kind of bring in different people. So it might be a data scientist, it might be a marketer, it might be a product person, it could be someone like me or someone in sales. And so kind of getting those people together can kind of just bring that community to life.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And Tom, there's a few questions that came in both during registration around dispersed teams, right? And not just like scattered across the US, but maybe there's a team in Asia, a team in Africa, a team in Europe, a team in North America. How do you balance all of that? I know you mentioned this before, but it'd be great to kind of share that and share a little bit more depth.
Yeah, so I think there's definitely kind of two aspects to that. So, and even for us at Uber for Business, extremely global. And so I do think, and we're still planning to have our own regional kind of North America group setting where we're going to present on our business. You know, for example, Postmates. You know, there's no Postmates. You know, in I don't know. India, you know, so that would be kind of not applicable to that business unit. So we're still going to have our regional settings, but I think the thing to really think about is, and I really hope people take this home, is not just over anchoring on HQ's time zone. So whether that's, you know, San Francisco, LA, New York, like doing things so that people don't feel like, man, I'm always the one coming up at, and we have, you know, we have people who have to do it. And of course we all do, like I'll do 6 a.m. calls, but, or late night calls, but I think the more that you can balance that so that it doesn't feel like it's all on HQ's time zone, sorry that it doesn't matter. I think that would be the wrong approach.
There's a lot to be said about sort of everybody sacrificing a little bit to make an amazing experience happen there. A tactical question, and this was actually a common theme in registration. So Tom, I want to hear your perspective on this. We talked a lot about the visionary side of it, like the yay, rah, rah. How much of an SKO should be tactical, whether it's account planning exercises or quarterly business reviews? Like, what's the right mix that you've seen for successful sales kickoffs between the visionary chest thumping excitement and the tactical, like, this is actually what you got to do to hit your number?
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question. The answer, I know it's going to sound kind of BS, but it does depend. So I mean, there's space for the visionary stuff, which I think is super, super important. I think the question for the tactical stuff is, you know, kind of going back to Raj and the HBR article around, you know, what is synchronous versus asynchronous. And so some of those things I think you could potentially do as like a homework assignment offline. So do some of that just so, you know, it's, you don't feel like totally under the gun and doing it live. And then kind of doing that maybe spread out over time. So for example, like, you know, as many people, I would imagine many of the sales ops people on the call or on the webinar, you know, we're going to do a recarve of our territories, of our, you know, customer books of business. It's going to happen. So we rebalance it. And so there's going to be, and we're kind of already, of course, in full motion, but being able to still be hands-on, especially with the newer folks. You know, here are some of the key Uber proprietary data points that we have around why this is a top account, why we expect you guys to do $1 million for this account. Here's the firmographic info, and just kind of from my perspective, you know, you can do things virtually, and we use a tool that we can see who's used it, who's taken the quiz. But I do think for, especially for sales, like being there together, doing it, there's something nice being on a virtual call of, but yeah, having it somewhat intimate as well.
I think that's a great point. And that lines up a question coming in live from Melissa Stewart. And this was a little bit about the death by PowerPoints. And her question was, do you recommend the kind of the read ahead approach where it's like, hey, here's your packet, Tom, for SKO 2021, and we're going to work on these things together? Like, how would you strike that right balance, I guess, between good synchronous live and kind of asynchronous take home?
Yeah, and I'm sure you know, people have read the case studies on companies who have a huge culture of doing that. You know, there's some cultures where they, you know, before you even sit down, you have to read something. So that's maybe a bit extreme on one end, but I do think, you know, Melissa, that's a great point that in this virtual environment, I think we are going to all have to shift a little bit more towards that of doing some pre-read. Now, you know, I don't know if you have to over-index on it because you still want to surprise and delight your team. So I think there's going to be some, and of course, some things you can do. And then, you know, for example, it might be hearing from like a very strategic customer that, you know, reading about it is just not going to be the same from hearing that person speak why they're using your product and bringing that story to life.
No, I think that's a great point. And a couple more questions coming in here. One from Sam, and Tom, I'd like your perspective on this. I'll offer mine as well. A specific platform that you'd recommend folks to use. Is there anything that you're thinking about that goes beyond just Zoom for your SKO at Uber?
Yep. Yeah. So we have, and there's probably a handful out there, but we have kind of an earlier stage kind of sales enablement platform where we use it, kind of pretty regularly going up to SKO. So I think people are kind of used to doing that, where they consume things weekly in a kind of a purely digital format. So if you haven't invested in a sales enablement tool, I don't know, Rich, G2 Crowd, wherever you want to go. I don't want to, I know people get super passionate about, especially like the sales automation space. There's like a culture war. So I don't want to offend anyone, but absolutely, we use one. And I think in this crazy year that is 2020, where we've been virtual, I think it can be even more powerful to use that.
No, I think that that's a great point in terms of the supporting infrastructure around it. Zoom or a meeting tool is going to be a component. A couple of things that I just kind of came to mind more on that social front, right? There's great platforms out there for networking. We've tested at MSP, Icebreaker in the past. There's another one, Run the World, which I think is being used by like the UN for things. There's a whole host of like event platforms that are more engaging than just Zoom. That may be relevant for SKO. So in addition to what Tom was saying and certainly if you need a recommendation on that, drop Tom or I a note. We can give you the list of the ones that we at least know. But beyond that social piece, there are platforms specific for that to make your sales kickoff feel a little bit more like it would if we were all in person together.
Yeah, and Rich, and it's not all just software. There are also kind of services as well. So we've had a ton of fun with our team. Again, kind of going outside the box of doing kind of team competitions, and there's like a real person that is the moderator, and we broke out into teams and we were competing over questions, and so we had a ton of fun. So there's some really innovative and cool things out there.
There's a lot, and certainly it's almost a question of like where do you stop, not where do you start.
Yeah.
So couple more questions. This one's a little bit more tactical for you. What's the right length, right? Both in terms of number of hours and also number of days.
Yeah. So this is something we've thought a lot about. So kind of again, pre-virtual, especially for the global teams. There's just so much pressure to pack all that into X number of days. And even then, you're going to have a very, very tight calendar of here's where you go, to the point where like, last year I was in New York, trying to check in with the family. Okay, I got to go, hope the kids are well, kind of that tightly packed. So I think that's one avenue, of course, with the non-digital. And then I think with the digital, I think we're still going to shoot for having it condensed into 1 week. And I think the reason for that is, especially for, all the sales leaders out there, we have numbers to hit. So if you're in SKO, you're not selling unless, there's some crazy thing I don't know about. And so you do want to balance both productivity with, enablement and energizing and learning about the year, but ultimately, like, it's Q1, we got to hit our number. It's Q2, it's the first half of the year. So, but I do think, I guess, to answer the question, I think keeping it within a week would be nice, but then having those follow-up check-ins of, so that, people it's not one ear out the other. It's, whether it's consistent product themes, whether it's goals, whatever it is, every business is going to be different, but making sure that it doesn't get lost.
The reinforcement is as important as the activity, especially if you think, just back to Tom's point, you take your sales team off the floor for a week, that's a lot of impact in your organization, and reinforcing those concepts weekly, monthly, whether it's through the learning tool or through training is going to make you make the most out of any investment that you make in this space. Couple more questions here, Tom, and then I want to just get kind of key takeaways from you. When thinking about breakout sessions and using those as a way to kind of foster collaboration and creativity, any thoughts on some prompts or themes that somebody could kind of take and use for those?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if you're going to have these breakout sessions, I do believe that that's where, Rich, back to your question, where I think you can really get tactical. So if you're in a breakout session talking about high level themes, that's probably not the best use of time. Where you see, I think, a lot of success is, let's just use an example. We've got an enterprise AE, we've got someone in marketing, someone in product, we've got a couple of SDRs, mid-market AE, Tom's in the room, Rich is in the room. Like, let's go through an account plan. Here's a fictitious logo. Here's where they are. They're using these certain features. How do we take this to the next level? How do we make this a wall-to-wall, or whatever the term is for your business? But like, how do we make this a successful logo that Dara is talking about at the next all hands, and so you can maybe have that as a tactical exercise. Here are the personas we're going to go after. Here are the scenarios. We're going to loop in an executive here and when. So that's where I think the breakout sessions, I think, definitely include some of those tactics, and then try to have some fun with it.
No, I think that's a great point, especially the account. I love account planning in that context, because if you've got an interdisciplinary group together, it's a chance to get new perspectives on debugging what's went wrong, or what could have gone differently, or how else to approach it. With that, Tom, I want to say thank you. This was really, really, really awesome. Before we wrap, though, any key takeaways, maybe something, tweet links for our folks today about planning and executing in 2021?
Yeah, and Rich and I, we've talked about this quite a bit, but like, please, if you can, take anything away, like, please don't just take, dust off your Google Slides, your PowerPoint, and just say, oh, we're just going to do this for this virtual event. Like, please be a little bit creative. Think about how you can incorporate kind of what we talked about today. I think number two, I'm a big kind of research buff, but I think the more you can, I think, I guess, to zoom out, people have been working remotely successfully for many years, many decades. And so there's a ton of research and, thought, kind of industry leading things that have been happening that definitely go do some homework, lean on, and see if you can incorporate some of that into your own SKO.
I love it, Tom. And I think one thing I would add that I kind of took away from this, that you mentioned a few times, is delight your attendees, delight your users of the SKO. I think it's easy to do a sales kickoff because it's something that everybody's doing, but really working backwards and saying, hey, what's going to delight and excite my CSMs and my AEs and my SDRs and the ops team that's going to be attending is incredibly important. And I think that will save you a lot of headaches down the road. So that way in 6 weeks, you're not throwing a thread up in MSP saying, my sales kickoff was a dud. Nobody retained anything. What do I do? It's a helpful first principle there. Tom, I know you're incredibly busy. I really do appreciate you taking this hour today to give us your perspective, to answer some of these questions. This was really, really, really super relevant for where sales is today. So I wanted to thank you on behalf of both the team behind the scenes with Hannah, and also the 20,000 members of the Modern Sales Pros community. This was really awesome. Thank you.
Rich, thanks for having me. What an amazing community MSP is. So happy to be on.
We love it. And Tom, thank you so much for all of our folks that are still on. Please do stay safe and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you all so much. Take care, everybody.
See ya.